Some of the most damaging relationships do not end with one brutal scene. They end in a way that makes you question your own mind. Someone hurts you deeply, goes quiet, leaves you alone with the damage, and then comes back talking like nothing happened. They send something light, casual, friendly, a normal little message after a very abnormal wound. And that is what this episode is about. Avoidant attachment, small talk after big hurt, and why that kind of reach out can scramble a person far more than people realize. Because when someone hurts you, disappears, and then returns with something surface level, the message is not only in what they said. The message is in what they skipped. The hurt is still sitting in the room, and they are talking around it. They are acting like the broken glass is not still on the floor. And if this kind of clarity helps your nervous system settle, subscribe. PsychBond is a daily decoder for psychology, relationships, and avoidant and anxious attachment patterns, so you stop guessing. One reason this hits so hard is that the nervous system wants two things after hurt. First, it wants the pain to be named. Second, it wants reality to make sense again. Small talk after big hurt gives you neither. It does not name what happened, and it does not restore order. It creates a very specific kind of confusion. You are relieved they came back, offended by how they came back, tempted to answer, angry that you want to answer, and ashamed that a tiny message still has this much power over your body. That reaction is not dramatic. It is exactly what happens when somebody reopens contact without repairing the injury. A casual message after serious pain is not neutral. It puts the burden of reality back onto the person who was already carrying too much of it. Now you have to decide what this means. Are they testing the water? Are they guilty? Are they lonely? Are they pretending nothing happened because they cannot face what they did? Are they trying to get access again without doing the work of repair? Are they scared? Are they selfish? Do they care? Are they just avoiding the hard part? That is the trap. They send one light message, and you are left holding 1,000 pounds of meaning. This is where avoidant attachment becomes especially painful for the other person. The avoidant move is often not a clean break and not a clean repair. It is a side door. They do not walk back in by naming the wound. They walk back in by lowering the emotional intensity of the entrance. A meme, a random question, a check-in, hey, a message about something ordinary. Something that lets them approach you without directly approaching what happened. On their side, this can feel safer, less exposing, less overwhelming, less likely to trigger shame, conflict, or the full emotional weight of the bond. But on your side, it can feel insane, because the scale does not match. The pain was huge. The reentry is tiny. The hurt changed your whole nervous system, and they are texting like they are asking about the weather. That mismatch is what makes this kind of reach out so destabilizing. It is not only that they came back, it is how small they made the doorway after leaving such a large impact. A lot of people misread this dynamic because they look only at the fact that the avoidant came back. But the better question is how they came back. There is a big difference between return and repair. A return just reopens contact. A repair tries to restore trust. A return says, I am here again. A repair says, I know what happened when I left, shut down, lied, withdrew, vanished, punished, or handled this badly, and I am willing to face it. Small talk after big hurt is usually a return without repair. And that difference matters more than most people realize. Because when you are hurt, you are not only waiting for the person, you are waiting for reality to be acknowledged. You are waiting for the injury to be seen. You are waiting for something that tells your body it is not crazy for feeling what it felt. A surface-level reach-out does the opposite. It can make you feel like you are the only one living in reality. You are still standing in the emotional aftermath, and they are speaking from somewhere above it, around it, or outside it. That can make a person question their own scale. Was it really that bad? Am I making too much of this? Should I just answer normally? Am I too sensitive if I cannot slide into a casual tone after what happened? This is one of the most painful parts. Small talk after big hurt can make the wounded person feel like they are now the difficult one, simply for still feeling the wound. That is why this pattern needs to be named plainly. It is not mature to pretend reality did not happen. It is not healing to skip over damage just because the person finally reached out. And it is not cruel to notice that a light message can still feel deeply disrespectful when the heavier truth has never been touched. One of the reasons avoidants do this is that shame and fear often make direct repair feel enormous. If they really let in what happened, they would have to feel your hurt, their role in it, the risk that you may be angry, the risk that they may be seen clearly, and the risk that saying sorry may not immediately fix access. That is a lot for an avoidant system. So instead of walking straight toward the wound, they circle it. They send something small, something ordinary, something that lets them test whether the door is still unlocked before they face what the fire did. This does not always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from emotional weakness. Sometimes it comes from guilt mixed with avoidance. Sometimes it comes from wanting connection without wanting accountability. Sometimes it comes from missing you, while still being terrified of the emotional reality that would come with a more honest return. But whatever the reason is on their side, the impact on your side still matters. Intent does not cancel impact. A small message can still land like a violation when the wound has been left untouched. That is where so many people get stuck. Because the little reach out activates hope. Hope says, maybe this is the start of something better. Maybe they are easing in. Maybe they do care. Maybe this is the only way they know how to come back. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes a surface-level message is the first clumsy step from somebody who does not know how to do emotional repair well. But the deeper question is not what the message could mean in the best case. The deeper question is what the pattern is telling you. Does this person come back in a way that protects themselves from discomfort while leaving you to carry the discomfort alone? Does this person want reconnection without the humility of repair? Does this person reach for your access before they reach for the truth? Those questions matter because they tell you whether this is about restoration or simply about relief. A lot of avoidant returns are not really about you first. They are about reducing their own distress. The distance got lonely. The silence got too empty. The bond started haunting them. They felt the absence. They missed the comfort. They wanted to know whether you were still there, so they reached out. But reaching out because they feel your absence is not the same as coming back in a way that honors your injury. This is the heart of the problem. Missing you is not the same as repairing what hurt you. Wanting access is not the same as wanting truth. Feeling drawn back is not the same as being ready to do the emotional work that real reconnection requires. And if you do not hold that line clearly, you can end up getting pulled into contact that feels meaningful on the surface, but repeats the original injury underneath. Another reason this pattern is so painful is that small talk invites self-betrayal in a very polished way. If they came back with something obviously offensive, it would be easier to reject. If they came back with open cruelty, it would be easier to protect yourself. But small talk is softer. It gives you room to participate in your own confusion. You can answer lightly. You can act normal. You can tell yourself you are just being civil. You can slide back into contact before your body has caught up with the fact that nothing real has been addressed. That is why this kind of message can be so dangerous. It does not force the issue. It tempts you to abandon the issue. It invites you into a version of contact where the injury becomes invisible, unless you are brave enough to name it. And after being hurt, brave enough can feel very expensive. Sometimes, the person who was wounded is not only carrying pain, they are also carrying longing, unfinished love, missing, confusion, and a desperate wish for things to go back to the good version. So when the avoidant finally appears again, even with something shallow, the body can respond before the mind does. There is relief. There is adrenaline. There is hope. There is anger. There is grief. There is the sudden urge to answer quickly. There is the sudden urge to punish them by not answering. There is the sudden urge to ask where they have been, what they want, why they think this is okay. This is why small talk after big hurt creates such an intense inner split. The nervous system is trying to solve several impossible things at once. Stay connected. Stay dignified. Stay honest. Stay open. Stay safe. That is too much to ask of a person from one little message. But that is exactly what this dynamic does. It takes a huge emotional reality and compresses it into a tiny moment of decision on your phone. Another thing that makes this so confusing is that avoidant small talk often sounds normal enough that if you show it to somebody else, they may not immediately understand why it hits so hard. They might say, it is just a text. They might say, at least they reached out. They might say, maybe this is their way of trying. They might say, just answer and see. But what they do not feel is the full context in your body. They do not feel the silence that came before it. They do not feel the collapse you went through while they were gone, or shut down, or acting like the relationship could be frozen and unfrozen at their pace. They do not feel the wound under the wording. And that is why context matters so much here. A message is never just a message once it lands inside a pattern. The same words mean different things depending on what they are sitting on top of. Hey, after a normal week is nothing. Hey, after big hurt, can feel surreal. It can feel insulting. It can feel relieving. It can feel manipulative. It can feel heartbreaking. And the reason it carries so much weight is that the message is not being read alone. It is being read against memory, abandonment, unmet repair, and all the emotional labor you have already been doing by yourself. This is also where story and reality split. The story your heart wants may say they came back because they finally understand, because they miss you, because they cannot stay away, because the bond is too real to ignore. But reality asks a harder question. What kind of return is this? Is this a real step toward repair? Or is this a low-risk entry point that lets them feel you again without facing what they did? Story asks what this could mean. Reality asks what this actually is. Story gets attached to intention. Reality looks at behavior. Story says, maybe this small talk is their awkward way of trying. Reality says, maybe, but what happens if I answer? Do they move toward truth, or do they keep the whole thing on the surface? That is where so many people get their answer. Not from the first message, but from what follows it. Do they make room for the real conversation? Do they acknowledge what happened? Do they show any sign that they understand the scale of the injury? Or do they keep trying to reopen contact while leaving the pain unnamed? That distinction will tell you whether you are dealing with somebody who is limited but trying, or somebody who wants emotional access without emotional responsibility. Both exist, and it is important not to confuse them. This is why the most useful question is not simply, should I answer? The more useful question is, what am I being invited into if I answer? Am I being invited into repair? Or am I being invited back into confusion? Am I being invited into a real conversation or into emotional smoke? Am I being invited into something that could restore trust or into a soft little opening that makes contact possible again while the wound stays buried? Those are very different invitations, and your body usually knows the difference before your mind wants to admit it. If you feel instant pressure, instant confusion, instant resentment, instant collapse, that is information. It does not mean never answer. It means do not betray that information just because the message itself looked small. Another thing people need to hear is this. Somebody reaching out after hurting you is not automatically a sign of growth. Sometimes it is just discomfort. Sometimes they are lonely. Sometimes they are curious. Sometimes they want to know if they still have you. Sometimes they miss the closeness, but not enough to face the truth. Sometimes they want the relief of reconnection without the weight of repair. That is why a return has to be judged by more than the fact that it happened. It has to be judged by what kind of return it is. Does it lower the truth or deepen it? Does it make your reality clearer or blurrier? Does it ask you to perform normal so that they do not have to face the hard thing? Or does it help create a path where the hard thing can finally be named? This is where people get hurt twice. First, by the original wound, and then by participating in a return that asks them to act like the wound is not still alive. That second hurt is especially corrosive because it often involves self-abandonment. You know something is unresolved. You know the message is too small for the damage. You know your body is not okay. But because you miss them, because you want to believe, because you do not want to be harsh, because part of you still hopes, you answer in the same small tone. And now, you are helping create a version of reality that leaves you out. That is why these moments matter so much. They are not just about what the avoidant is doing. They are also about whether you are going to stay loyal to the size of your own reality. A lot of healing in attachment is exactly that. Learning not to reduce your reality to fit someone else's comfort level. Learning not to call a shallow return meaningful just because it relieved the pain of silence. Learning not to confuse contact with care. Learning not to let your longing erase your own standards. Because one of the hardest truths in this dynamic is that when somebody comes back with small talk after big hurt, the move itself often reveals the problem. They want back in, but not all the way in. They want contact, but not full truth. They want relief, but not the full emotional cost. And if that is the pattern, you need to know it, because otherwise, you will keep treating little reaches as big repair. They are not the same. This does not mean every awkward return is fake. Some people are sincerely clumsy. Some people really do not know how to enter through the front door after shame. Some people lead with something small because they are terrified of saying the wrong thing. But sincerity alone is not enough. What matters is whether the small talk opens into something honest or keeps replacing it. That is the line. If the ordinary message becomes a bridge to truth, that is one thing. If the ordinary message becomes a way of skipping truth, that is something else entirely. One leads to possible repair. The other leads to recycled pain. There is another reason this pattern leaves such a mark. It forces the injured person to become the adult for both people. You are the one holding the timeline. You are the one holding the missing context. You are the one remembering that something serious happened, while the other person tries to restart the connection from a smaller emotional place. That imbalance creates exhaustion. You are not only in pain, you are now managing the truth while they manage their comfort. And once that happens a few times, the relationship starts teaching you a bad lesson. It starts teaching you that if you want contact, you may have to carry the whole emotional reality by yourself. That is not closeness. That is a private burden dressed up as reconnection. Another useful test here is very simple. Ask what this message is asking from me. Is it asking for honesty? Is it asking for openness? Is it asking for a real conversation? Or is it quietly asking me to make the past smaller so the present can feel easier for them? If the message only works when you reduce your own reality, then the message is already telling you the limit of what this person can face right now. That is not automatically the end of the story, but it is information. And information matters more than hope when your nervous system has already paid a high price. Real repair does not require perfection. It does require contact with reality. It requires some willingness to match the scale of the hurt, some willingness to let the discomfort be real, some willingness to stop using surface tone as a way of controlling depth. If that willingness never appears, then the relationship may keep reopening without ever becoming safe. And that is why this moment matters so much. Small talk after big hurt does not only test whether you still want them, it tests whether you will now abandon yourself to keep the line open. The person on the other side of this pattern needs permission to notice how insulting it can feel without having to flatten the other person into a villain. Both things can be true. They may be scared, and this may still be deeply unfair to you. They may care, and this may still be nowhere near enough. They may be doing the best they can, and their best may still be a bad place for your nervous system to live. That is the kind of adult truth people need in relationships. Not every problem is solved by deciding somebody is evil. Sometimes, the real truth is more painful than that. They are limited. They are scared. They are avoidant. They are emotionally weak in this area. They do not know how to come back properly. And you are still the one left carrying the cost. That matters, because your life is built on impact, not on potential. And if the impact of their return is that you feel scrambled, reduced, pressured to play along, or pushed to make yourself smaller so the contact can continue, then that is the thing to take seriously, not just the nice wording. This is also why little messages can become control points in a relationship. Not always intentionally, but psychologically. The person who left or hurt you now gets to reappear in a tiny form and watch whether that is enough to reopen the channel. And if it is, they learn something. They learn they can come back lightly after leaving heavily. They learn they do not need to match the scale of the wound to regain access. They learn that a small reach can get big emotional doors open. Again, that may not be a conscious strategy, but patterns teach people. And if you keep answering light after being hurt deeply, the pattern learns that reality can be lowered whenever they are uncomfortable. That is why your response matters so much. Not because you need to punish, because you need to be honest about the level of reality required for you to feel safe. Some people hear this and think it means the only strong move is silence back or a hard shutdown. Not necessarily. The strongest move is alignment. If the wound was big, your response should not pretend it was small. That is the point. Alignment. You do not have to be cruel. You do not have to be cold. But you also do not have to help create a fake normal. You do not have to act like small talk is enough when it is not. You do not have to reward emotional bypassing with easy access. You do not have to turn your own hurt down just because they are finally talking again. That is where a lot of people reclaim themselves. Not by becoming hard, by becoming congruent, by refusing to act lighter than the truth. That kind of honesty changes everything, because it forces the relationship into reality. Either the person can meet you there, or they cannot. Either they can come toward what happened, or they can only circle it. Either they want real reconnection, or they want the comfort of your availability without the work of repair. Those differences matter. Small talk after big hurt is one of the clearest tests in avoidant dynamics because it reveals whether the person wants you back in the room or wants the truth back in the room. Those are not always the same thing. And if you know that, you stop getting hypnotized by the fact that they reached out at all. You start looking at the quality of the return. You start asking, not do they care, but what shape does their care take under pressure? Does it move toward honesty? Or does it hide inside low-risk contact? Does it deepen reality? Or does it ask me to shrink reality so they can feel safe again? That is the real question. Because, in the end, the problem is not that they sent a small message. The problem is that the small message arrived where big truth was needed. And if you keep confusing one for the other, you will keep calling access repair. And you will keep getting hurt by the same pattern in prettier packaging. That is why this matters. Because love does not only show in who comes back, it shows in how they come back. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.